Hey everybody, happy Friday. I think we are actually live on all of the platforms today. This is this is only the second time we're doing this live stream stuff, so hopefully we'll do a whole bunch more in the future. But just to make sure that we are live, so it looks like we're live on YouTube, which is good. Been having some problems with LinkedIn. I don't know, it looks like LinkedIn isn't live yet, so I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure why that doesn't work, but we are live there. We're live on Twitter, I know that. And we should be live on Twitch as well. So exciting. Let's see. Yeah, hey, we're live on Twitch. So hopefully we've got some people checking it out. It's all recorded on YouTube and all that kind of stuff, so you can come and check us out later as well. All right, so I'm Jeremy Daly. I'm CEO over here at Ampt. We're trying to build something pretty different, we think, something that sort of changes the way people build applications in the cloud. So hopefully it is some exciting times coming up, and we'll talk about all different things that Ampt can do. But today we're talking about data. So last week we talked about data. We went through a whole bunch of things, spent over an hour going through things such as setting and getting data, how we do collections, a little bit on eventing, which we get some feedback that people were really interested in that. So we'll do a little bit more of that today as well. So I actually wrote down some things today for us to cover, and that includes things like overwrites, how we can do complete overwrites, how we can use labels in order to add additional indexes to our data that's backed by DynamoDB. We're going to quickly talk about pagination. Again, the way that the data module works is it's just an interface to DynamoDB, so you're going to get pagination where it can only bring back up to a meg, and then of course if you want to actually limit the number of responses in each group that you get back, you can use that for pagination. We'll show how you can do that, and a couple little features we built in to make it easier to paginate. We'll talk more about event handlers, specifically maybe filtering by key and how you can do some different things with event handlers so you can do your change data capture. And then we are going to talk about importing and exporting data. So one of the really great features we have is the ability for you to quickly work with data without having to worry about going in and entering it manually. You can just reset data, export data. It's very cool stuff. We'll get into that. And then we'll do a little bit more advanced filtering on collections. I'm not sure the exact order we'll do this in. Spend about an hour though. Comments are open. If you have questions about what we're working on or more questions in general, please feel free to put a comment somewhere, and hopefully Restream will be working correctly and pulling everything in. So I am just going to quickly check on the status of the stream here to see if LinkedIn is doing anything. Right now it seems as though LinkedIn is still not working. I don't know. So we'll have to figure that out at some point. So I guess if you're on LinkedIn, which you will not be able to hear me say this, but maybe you find your way over to one of the other channels that we're using here. So we are live on Twitch and on YouTube here. So okay, great. Well, let's just get started. So the data module, just quickly to recap what we talked about last week. So the data module is an interface that we have built for Ampt that allows you to quickly interact with DynamoDB tables behind the scenes. Everything on Ampt is backed by AWS. We deploy directly to the primitives. There's no layer in between. We're not a PaaS. This is deploying directly to your AWS accounts. We will manage and take care of the AWS accounts completely for you. If you've got bigger workloads and you want to deploy to your own AWS accounts that you own and you manage, we can do that as well. But the key here is that the approach that we take through infrastructure from code is that you just write application code, you use these SDKs that we've created for you, and that tells the system, I need this table, and here's how I want to interact with it. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about a few things. I do want to clear up something from last week. So last week, of course, when you're streaming live and you can't figure something out, it's very frustrating. So last week we were showing at the end how to do a data.get and how we could pull back multiple values from a collection that you create. And so this is what we had done last week, where when we were just doing the star like this, maybe I will zoom into this a little bit. When we're just doing this star, this actually allows us to get all of the data that's in that user collection, which is super handy to bring that back. But what we were actually trying to do here was to then bring back a single item. And so actually, let me just go ahead and start up the Ampt console. By the way, this is the same project I was in last week. This is just a standard Ampt project here. So I'll connect to the Ampt CLI here, and you can see that I'm in my personal sandbox. And then, as we showed last week, you can run scripts that will access so you can run local scripts that will access your remote data and your remote parameters and storage and all those other things. Those can all be done remotely using by running a script in the Ampt context. So to do that, again, we just do run, and then we called our script here data-tests.js, so we can go ahead and run this. So this is querying users cannot read properties undefined reading items. At least we're getting an error this time. We weren't getting this error last time, I think, which was confusing me, because essentially what was happening is we were trying to get results.items, and we were showing up as undefined. I think we've made a few changes. We also added this cool little thing, by the way, to the CLI where it tells you the last synced time. We were getting feedback that people didn't realize, I wasn't sure if something had actually synced to my developer sandbox. So now if you go in and you make a change here, so I'll just say test. As soon as you save this will sync, and then it will tell you when the last time it syncs. It does a little counter to give you a little bit of feedback, so you know that something is something has changed. And then once you get to 10 seconds, it'll just go ahead and and give you a message that's not kind of in your face. So we're curious to see if you like this thing. Just kind of getting people to feel confident that their information has been synced and that they can go ahead and test it. Of course, it happens so fast, but I do this sometimes where I forget to save and you don't know it. So hopefully this is a good indicator. So going back to here, so this was what happened last week, is that I was trying to grab users, John at doe.com, and then I was actually trying to query the result, or I was trying to access the .items underneath that, and that doesn't exist when you query for a single item. So if we run this again, this should go ahead and okay, what are we doing this time? It's possible that does this not exist? Let me try this again. Let me try one thing here, because of course things are going to go wrong on a live stream. So, the demo gods. Try this again. The tests. There's a reason why that didn't come back, because I was playing around with some things and I named it John 2Do. So John. So let me show you this. Okay, so this is what we had tried to do last week, like this. Oops. And so this will go ahead and bring back the single user John Doe. And what I was trying to do last week was, because I was bringing back a collection, I was looking for the items here. So when you run this here, this will come back as undefined, like that. So that was just me poorly coding JavaScript and not realizing that I had change something. So again, so if we run this, we can get a user, just the individual user here. If we want to get a larger, if we want to get everybody in the collection, we can just use the star command here, and this will return a list of items, and the items will be all of the different ones that are in there. Now again, in our data here, we do have the ability to go in and change our data from the dashboard. Pretty handy to go ahead and just make simple changes here. And of course, you have the ability to run the same type of get queries that we ran before. So if you did users :* like this, and we query by the key, this will return those. If you did users : Jane * like this, then this will just find the ones that start with Jane, and then you can go in and you can do those. All right, so let's get into overwrites. This is something we didn't talk about last week. So we talked a lot about upserts last week and the way that those work. So the way that the set command works, and I'll go ahead and bring this up for setting items. So the way that the set command works here is that essentially you can specify the key, and the key can either be just just a simple value like this. It can also be a collection. I think we have a collection somewhere specified here, data.set key. I guess we don't show the collection there. I guess we specify it in the collection section. So anyway, so you basically just set a value. They can be a string value, it can be a number, a Boolean, an array, or a nested object that gives you a lot of capabilities and a lot of control for doing some different things. I got my Pro Mouse working too as well. So this is the basic way that you would set these. When you do a set that puts more than just a single value in, so it's not a simple value, so if it's not just a scalar, if it's something that is a more complicated value, then anything you write is automatically merged. Okay, so we talked about this last week. If we can actually show this here. Let me go down here. Let me actually do this. I'm going to hide my window there, and then I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. That's too big. Maybe like that. Okay, so we had a couple of things that we had demoed over here. Let's see if we can find it again. All right, so here we go. So we want to do, so let's go ahead and do data.set, and we will, const results like this. So this is our user jane@doe.com. So if we update all of this data, whatever we change in this data, so we say this is 31, and we'll say New York 1, and we'll say Jane 1 at Doe here. If we run this, this will come back and it will give us the updated information about Jane at Doe.com. And then what we talked about as well is that you don't actually need to specify some of this information. So if we just wanted to update Jane's email address and city, we can do that. We run this code again. This will update just those pieces, but then return the full object again. So this is super handy. That there's so many reasons why you would want to do this. You don't want to have to update the same object every single time. But let's say that we want to replace Jane's record completely. Okay, so let's say that maybe somewhere in here we add, I'm going to do test true, and then I'll rerun this. And now we have test true in there just as a random attribute that's assigned to this item. So now we want to actually overwrite this, but we want to update all this information, and we don't want true to be in there. Now we might not even know what all these other values are. There might be other things that we're setting on the field, but we just want to overwrite it with a fresh set of Jane Doe data. So let me actually go back and I'll change this email address back to 1 as well. Okay, so if I was to run this now, and this is the data, this is what I want it to look like. So I go ahead and try to run this, and this will again give me these weird node listening errors. That happens every once in a while. So this worked in that Jane's email was updated, all her information is there now, but that test true is still there. We talked about last week, you could set test equals to null or undefined, and that would go ahead and remove it. But that actually isn't going to give us, but that again requires us to know every bit of information we want to remove. We just want to put an item. So if you're familiar with DynamoDB, there's a put command. We didn't want to introduce that. We wanted it to be super simple to figure out. So what we added was you can attach, there's options that you can put when you're setting an item. We talked about the meta option last week. So one of the options that you can do here is this value called overwrite, just a Boolean value. And basically what this says is, I want to make sure that I'm completely overwriting this item. I don't care what's in there, but I just want to overwrite it. So if we go ahead and specify overwrite true here and save this, then when we go ahead and run this command here, this will go ahead and overwrite Jane's record with just her data. And this gets rid of that test. It's gone. Okay, this is great. Works really, really great when we just want to wipe everything out. But there's a small problem here. So I'm going to go ahead and specify meta true like this. And then overwrite we're going to set to false. So we don't want to overwrite anything here. We just want to spit back some metadata. All right. So when I run this, what I'm going to see is I'm going to get a created and a modified date. And as you see that these have been modified, this was modified 30 seconds after we created it, which is great, right? I mean, that's nice. We want to be able to see the difference between the fact that it was created here and it was modified there. All right, maybe I want to do the same thing again. I'm going to run some other update to Jane's data, and this goes ahead and comes back and says, okay, so now it's okay, a little under a minute. All right, this is what we want, except that what if we want to overwrite everything and we want to maintain that created date? DynamoDB doesn't do this very well. It doesn't store metadata for you, which is a little bit frustrating because it would be nice to sort of have those different times, or have those just those semantics about an item in there that you didn't have to worry about maintaining. Unfortunately, it doesn't do that. So we built a way to get around it, or at least hopefully a good way to get around it. And the way that we do that is by using what we call timestamp integrity checks. Let me just zoom into this here. So the way that timestamp integrity checks work is basically when you set the overwrite to true here, you can actually pass in the original created timestamp, and then that will tell the system either these match, so I'm going to update it with the same created timestamp, or they don't match, and I'm going to fail the operation. So this is actually really, really handy if you want to do something, again, where you want to do like a full overwrite. So I'll just show you how this works quickly. So the overwrite here, we're going to set to true. And then we're going to say that, so we pass in this created, which again, we pass in as a epoch timestamp. All right, so we pass in created. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So this is not going to match. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to overwrite Jane's record. I'm going to say, oh, she's 32 now. And again, her email is Jane2, like this. And we'll clear this out and we'll run this. So what this should do is, because these timestamps don't match, even though we're trying to overwrite it, it's going to give us an error, and it's going to say the date integrity check failed. So this is just a really nice way that if you do want to maintain that created date, but you want to overwrite the entire record, you can do that with this integrity check. So pretty straightforward. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so do we have any questions about that? Got a couple of comments on here from AJ and Daryl and Eternal Theo. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing here, which will be, let's talk about labels for a second. So labels are, if you're familiar with DynamoDB, labels are basically GSIs. And the reason why we do GSIs with DynamoDB is because you only get a single primary index. That's the main way in which you access data. And so you're limited in terms of your access patterns in terms of how you can actually access data. So the way that labels work is it actually gives you a GSI. They work the same way as your primary index, so we use the same sort of collection : key name. They don't have to be a collection. You can just specify a key name as well. And that just gives you a different way to slice and access your data. And there's some pretty cool things that you can do with that. So let's do this. Let's jump back over here and let's go back to Jane. So we're going to get rid of this information here. And actually what we're going to do is let's go into, we're going to show you a much cooler way to do this in the future. But let's get all our items here. And actually let's do this. Let's delete John Doe here. We'll go back over to this and we're going to set John Doe, john@doe.com. So all his information is right, and let's go ahead and reset Jane's information. She's getting younger. She's only 30 now, and then we'll do this, do that. Okay, save this. We'll just run this to give us everything updated. So we should see now in here that we have Jane and we have John, and they are 30 and 31 respectively. Okay, so what we did, and you know, let's actually do this too, just to add a little bit more to it. Let's add, how about we add, I don't know, what's a good name here? I'm making these up on the fly. Here, I'm going to use my daughter's name, Julia. So Julia at, let's say Smith. My last name's not Smith, but that's fine. So Julia Smith, and she is not 25. She's only 15. Thank God, because I don't know what I'd do if my kids were that old. But she lives in Boston, and she is going to be Julia at smith.com. Okay, I just want to add another, just another record in here so that we have that. So let's go ahead and add Julia Smith in. Okay, so we now should have our 3 people. Okay, so we've got 3 people in the system. All right, so the way that we built these, or the way that we basically structured these collections. Now, this is the user collection. Again, you don't have to do anything special to create a collection. You just specify whatever name you want with a colon, and then anything after that becomes the key. You can use multiple colons after that as well. All right, so if we wanted to just query back, let's do this so we can see this. We'll query back all of our users. Let me see if I move this over, panel position on the right. Move this over here, and then that way we can get a little bit more data from our results. Okay, so we will make sure we save that and clear, and we'll run this. Okay, so this gives us back our 3 users. And we structured our data this way, we structured our keys this way because we want to be able to access these individual records by their email address. And you can do some cool things, again, where if we just wanted to get these all start, I should have used something that started with like a JU or JA or something. But essentially, if you just type in J star, this will go ahead and bring back all of the users that their email address starts with J. Right? We talked about this before, and that's because this is basically doing a partial search. If you're familiar with DynamoDB, this is a begins with search that it just is automatically calculating for you. So like in this case, when it starts with JO, we only get this one item. Okay, so this is great. This gives us a whole bunch of different things that we can do. We could actually, if we had some other things in here, and we'll get into some advanced filtering and some of the things you can do a little bit later. But so this gives us one way in which we can access our users. And that's fine because this is useful to be able to access them. Like we said, we can actually grab if we know the full, key and we want to access just a single record like that, we have the ability to do that. But where labels come in is, again, gives us that option to access them in another dimension or from sort of another dimension with whatever we want to be able to do. So let's start off something really, really simple. Let's go ahead and, oops, I don't want to be there. Let's go ahead and update John or one of these records. We'll actually update Julia's record. We'll update this record with a label. So I'm going to go ahead in this section here. Again, this is where we can add, and let me bring up this. This is where in the in the options section of a set, this is where we can add a label. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a simple label, and my label is going to say, and again, I got to pick a label, so I got to pick label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We give you 5 labels out of the box. Need more? Let us know. We would love to know your use case. The reason why these are labeled and you can't just have like a random label is that these are tied to GSIs that get generated on the underlying DynamoDB table for you. So these are very specific indexes. So you can't, if you set some value in label 1 on one item and then some value in label 2 on another item, you can't correlate those two things together. Like if you have a specific access pattern and a way that you want to access the data through a label, every item that you're going to want to access with that would need to use the same label identifier, because that's how indexes work. Anyways, okay, label 1. So let's say that we want to do something simple here, and we'll just say active, like that. All right, so I'm gonna comment this out for a second. Let me bring this back, actually. Oops, there we go. All right, so we'll clear and run this. Okay, so this should now update Julia. Now, by the way, we're not seeing the metadata here because we're not asking for it. So let's set meta true, and I'll show you a couple different things of how this actually works. All right, so we'll run this again. Meta true. This should spit back Julia now with her created, modified, and this label 1 that is tagged as active. If we go over to our dashboard here, we will see, if we access Julia, that we now have label 1 marked as active. Okay, on these other users, they will not have a label 1. Okay, so this is where it gets really cool. So now that we have that, we can actually say, well, I want to get all of my active users. So I can write a query down here that says, all right, so I'm no longer getting, this, by the way, always defaults to the primary index, right? So you're always doing the primary index. So there's 2 different ways that I can do this. One is I can use the get by label, which is just a shortcut for basically saying get and then passing in the option here of label. Oops. That did not work. Label and then label 1 like this. So these 2 things are equivalent here. Actually, let me show you that. I guess I can't hide that, huh? All right, well, let's try this again. Do this, put this here. So this data get by label would just take label 1 as the first parameter, and then whatever it was that I'm querying for after that, and be sure to probably. Okay, so these would be the 2 options. So data.get, zoom in a little bit here so you can see it. So data.get with a label as one of the options, or data get by label. So it's up to you how you would want to use these things. All right, but regardless of which way you do it, I'm just going to use the traditional way here to start. What we're looking for is anyone who matches a key called active. All right. So now when we run this over here, we will get back Julia at smith.com. The reason why we got that back, and actually here I'm gonna, I don't want to get all, well, yeah, well, this might get a little messy if we show too much, but I'll do items here. Okay, so this should bring back her record. Okay, so we're not, so the late, and I'm not showing the meta. Let me do this as well. And now I'm gonna bring, I just don't want this to get too messy with all of the stuff that we're bringing back here. I should probably spell true correctly and then do this. Okay. All right. So labels work the same way that GSIs work, as I mentioned. The great thing about GSIs is 2 things. There's one is that they can be sparse indexes, which means that if you don't put anything in that GSI, then that item won't be added to that index, which means that, again, it's great for things, especially if there's like a small amount of data, even large amount of data, it doesn't really matter. But like if you only want to put certain things in that label, then it works really, really well. So things like active, for example, is great. The other thing about GSIs is GSIs do not need to be unique. The identifier, the PK and the SK for a GSI does not need to be unique, which means you can use the same thing over and over again, and then make it super easy to group things together and pull multiple things back. So we only updated Julia's record with active. So if we actually go over into our data here, let's go into Jane as well, and we'll update her label 1 as active as well and save that. Now if we run the same query over here, we will get both of those records back. So that's simple, easy enough to use. You just want to do that. And of course, the point here is that if we try to access John's record, he has nothing in label 1. So there's no way we can access him on label 1 because he's not part of that index because he doesn't have that label. Okay, labels, like I said, work the same exact way as the primary index does when it comes to collections and keys. So another cool thing that we could do is, if we go into Julia's record again, is maybe we want to say that it's active. Actually, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to say that, and then we're going to put a date on this. So what's today's date? 2024, 01/26. And then we can put a timestamp in of, let's say, 10/31/00. I know it's not a real timestamp, but yeah, it's close enough. All right, so I'm going to save this. I'm actually going to copy this, so I have the exact copy. Hit save, and then I'm going to go into Jane's record, and I'm going to do the same thing here, only I'm going to say that she was made active on the 22nd at 8 a.m., not 80, that doesn't make sense, at 8 a.m., and save that. Okay, and then actually let's go into John as well. We'll give him a label too, and he was made active on the 23rd at, let's say, 12:00. Okay. All right, so now we have a separate index. We've now added a label 2 here. So if we want to go here and change this to label 2, now we should be able to query everybody back by using the same type of star, the wildcard, because again, they work the exact same way. So let's run this, and we should get all of them back. And we do. So now we get Julia, we get John, and we get Jane. The other thing that is interesting about this, and this, I didn't even think to mention this, but so one of the things that you might notice is that we're pulling them back using label 2. Well, label 2 actually has a sort on it. Now, again, these are sort keys, right? Maybe don't think about them this way when we're thinking about them through just, as identifiers or as keys, but these are sort keys. So this is 122, this is 123, and this is 126. These are in order. A little thing that we could do if we wanted to is we could say reverse like this and say we want to reverse the order of those. Like that. And then when we run this again, this will now sort them in reverse. So we will get Julia first on the 26th, we'll get John Doe on the 23rd, and Jane on the 22nd. You can do this on the primary index as well as any of the labels. And again, this is one of the reasons why it's super useful to have a sort key that has the ability to do that can be sorted. I can never pronounce this correctly. Lexicographical, however you say that. Anyways, it is a jumbled words. That means that it is basically it's like a text. It's like a text base. So the value 1 and 100 would, if you had like 1, 2, 100, 1 and 100 would actually sort together, and then 2 would be after that. And so what you want to do is, if you are trying to use like a number, like dates are great for sorting. But if you did want to use like a number, then you could do that. Then you'd want to typically do 0 padding. All right, we have a comment here that I'm going to try to bring up and see how this works. Okay, you're kind of hidden there. Well, I think I can maybe move you over. There we go. All right, how about that? All right, are the GSIs created as the labels are added, or are they pre-created? That's a great question. Thank you, Andreas. So we pre-create 5 GSIs for you just so that they're instantly available. But that is certainly something that we have discussed internally about once you actually publish it to production, being able to remove or add additional GSIs if you need them. So essentially a GSI, just to have it there in on-demand mode, doesn't cost anything. And if you don't add any data to it by assigning a label, then it does not cost you anything. So it doesn't add any additional storage or things like that. But great question. But yes, they are added or they are pre-created. Okay. So we were talking about sorting, right? So sorting, again, the reason why you would want to use a sort key is because it gives you more flexibility on how you can filter the data. And while we're here, we might as well just get into some of the data filtering stuff. So we can sort with the reverse true or reverse false, or just leaving this blank, and this will give us the ability to change the direction in which the items are sorted for us, which is great for things like pagination, which we'll talk about in a minute if we were trying to get the most recent items or the earliest items and so forth. All right, but if we want to do something really cool with this, then we can get a little bit fancier with the filtering. So let's go back to our documentation here, and let's see if I can find the partial matches. Okay, so this is what we want to look at here. So let's look at partial matches. So seeing the wildcard, retrieve all the items, but we can use greater than and less than, as well as greater than and equal than. So when you actually get data, you can use, after the colon, you just use a greater than symbol or greater than or equal than symbol, or less than equal than symbol, and then some partial part of what it is that you're searching for. So let's do that. Let's show you how that works. Keep zooming in instead of zooming out. All right, so let's say we know that we have 22, 23, and 26. So those are the dates that they were made active. So let's go ahead and actually, we only want the ones that were created before 2024, 01, 25. So we do this, and then we run this here, and we should get just the 2. So here's the one that was created on the 23rd. Here's the one that's created on the 22nd. So we just get those. If we wanted to get any one that was greater than it, then we just do this. We'll run this again, and this one we should just get John because he was created on the Julia, because she was created on the 26th. All right, so you can easily just sort and say, we only want data that matches a certain thing. Same thing with this is that, again, you could use equal to here if you wanted to have like an exact match. It doesn't have to be an exact match. Again, the way that it works is it's sort of like it's a lexicographical. I got to figure out how to pronounce that word. But it basically allows you to match on anything that is close to equal to it. So it works really well. So that's one way to do it, right? That's sort of a fun thing that you can do. The other thing you can do is you can retrieve items between 2 keys. So this is really cool if you wanted to search on a date range, for example. So rather than saying anything greater than this or anything less than this, so there are some special characters. You're probably already thinking this yourself. You're saying, well, there's a pipe character here. You already mentioned the greater than, equals, and so forth. So you can't use those characters in your key names. We thought that was a fine trade-off given the things that you can actually do. So retrieving items between 2 keys, very, very cool. So let's go ahead and show that over here. So rather than saying active before or after this, we want to get anything that was between the 25th, let's say, and why don't we say the 22nd. I'm trying to remember what we use for dates here. So this will say, give us anything between the 25th and the 22nd. I go ahead and run this. And I don't think it matters which order you put them in. What did I do wrong? Invalid key expression upper bound to be great. Oh, so it does matter which way you put it in. So we want this to be between the 22nd and the 25th. So let me do that again. And then this should give us any records that match. So this was on the 23rd, so that's greater than the 22nd, but less than the 25th. And this is the 22nd, so it's greater than the 22nd and less than the 25th. Let me go ahead and change this. So we said 22nd, 22nd, 22nd. So we actually want, why don't we say 23rd to the 25th, just to see the difference there. And that'll get us, yes, so that'll just bring back the 1. So anyways, cool stuff, and I think that those are the main ways to do some of that. And again, you have the you have the star as well. You have the partial matching. We've already talked about that. Okay, let's talk about importing and exporting. This way we can generate some data, and then we can do some cool pagination stuff with that. Okay, so I think it is not described here. I think it's actually described on the interactive shell page here. So one of the options is import. So this imports data from a file name in your local directory to your sandbox, and it will default to data.json, and you can overwrite it and so forth. This is probably going to be easier for me to show you than it will be to explain it. So this is how this works. So essentially in my sandbox over here, and I'm going to open back up my window. So let me go ahead and move this back to the bottom. Like this. Okay, so in my local directory over here, again, this is a regular local directory, I have the option through my CLI to actually type export, and I can name this. So let me call this users.json like this, and I'm going to go ahead and export that. What this just did is just exported a file for me. Oops. That contains all of the data that I have in my data table right now. So this just exported that data for me in a structured JSON format so that I can actually now use this to re-import data and do something interesting with it. So a couple things. The created and the modified dates when you are importing data, those don't matter. Those get ignored. You can't update created and modified dates in the system because those are meant to be sort of immutable in the sense that they can only be changed based off of interactions with the system. But it does allow you to update any other data. You can do labels. You can do time to lives. You can do all those other things. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, so we've got our user Jane Doe. We've got the information about her, so we can leave this in. That's not a big deal. We've got our user John Doe. We've got our user Julia Smith. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to create another record down here. I can leave this created in. It doesn't really matter. I do need to change this. So let's call this, what we say, Bob Smith. Okay, and so Bob Smith. Where is Bob Smith from? Let's say Tulsa. I don't know why I thought of that. But anyway, so bob@smith.com, and he's old like me, so he's 45. Okay, so we just created this new thing here. We've got the same, well, we'll change the active. Why don't we do this? We'll change the active to today's date, which is the 24th. Okay, so we've now added a new user here, and let's go and change something else as well. So let's say that John Doe actually moved. He is headed down to Atlanta. About that. Okay, so we made some changes in a local file, right? Nobody is seeing this information yet. If I go back to my data here, this data is all the same. Nothing has changed here. Let me get all items again. So nothing has changed here. It's all the same exact stuff. So Jane Doe is still in New York, which we didn't change anyways. John Doe is still in New York, and so forth. All right, this is why this is so powerful. Because now I can just run import users.json, run this, and that's just imported that data for me. So now if we go back to our table over here, we see that we've got Bob, we've got Jane, we've got John, we've got Julia. If we go into John's here, we can see that he's now in Atlanta. If we go into Bob, we can see all of Bob's information and so forth. And this is why this is so powerful, because when I'm developing and I'm writing a bunch of interactions, maybe I've got some APIs that are changing things, maybe I've got some data handlers that enrich some data, maybe they do some of these other things, right? So I go into the system, and I'll just show it this way so we can sort of see it. I think we have, let's go back into my data test for a second. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring back all my active users from my table. Let's make that bigger. So let's run this. So this spits back all my active users. They're all here. And I'm just gonna, I like to make things more obvious, so I'm gonna turn metadata off for a second. False. Oh, actually, I'm gonna do this. I'll leave metadata on, but I'm gonna get rid of items here. Sorry, I'm a stickler for these sort of things. Okay, run this again. So this is just going to spit back those 4 records for me, right? So here we go. We've got Jane, John, Bob, and Julia. All right, now I'm writing some tests. I've got some things that are playing around with my data. It's manipulating things. It's enriching data, like I said. It's making all kinds of changes. So I'm over here in my and 2 users get deleted from the system, and maybe we update stuff in Jane's record and we actually remove this label here, and then Julia, we update her where she actually went to Chicago for some reason. Probably pretty cold there right now. So we made all these changes to the data. We've played around with it. We've run all these tests. Maybe we automated some of these tests and so forth. We go back over here. Oops, it's weird. So we go back over here. We run this data test again, and we're going to get back 1 user, and everything else has changed. Okay, so now I got to run all my tests again. I got to go in. I made a mistake somewhere, or I want to change something, how the behavior works, whatever. All I do is I run my import user.json, and then I run data.test, and all of my data is immediately reseeded and reset back to the state that I had before. And the great thing here too is that if we want to export this data as, we'll call it users2.json like this, now we have a separate set of data. So if I want to go in and go to users2 and I want to say, well, users2 doesn't have this user here, or this user here. Oops, what did I just do? I don't know how many users I deleted, but that's fine. So now I clear this, go ahead and do this. So now I want to import users2, users2.json like this. I've imported this. I run my script again, and now this just has those. Oh, actually, this didn't do what I was expecting it to do, because this will also merge data, right? So if you want to add more data, you're not overwriting everything that's in your database. If I want to do that, then I can just go ahead and specify either the -o or -- overwrite like this. Now I run this, and I run this data again, and now I'll just have my 2 users in there. So you can also merge data, you can import new data, and actually the way that this works is this will merge data from individual records as well. So anyways, it's very cool. It does a lot of, just gives you a really great way to sort of interact and build things quickly. All right, let's see here. Okay, so we've talked about the advanced filtering. We talked about importing and exporting. We talked about labels. All right, let's talk about pagination. So let's go back to our users record over here. We have our, what did we have here? So now we have 4 users in the system. Not a ton, but that should be useful for us here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually import users. Why are we so lazy as developers? We keep hitting the up button until we find the right thing, as opposed to just retyping it overwrite. Okay, so I've overwritten our users. We got all 4 users in there. Okay, so now I'm not going to worry about doing. labels. I'm just going to use a regular, delete this. Please stand by. All right, so we're just going to do users star. We don't need labels. Okay. All right, so we should now just get all of our users back. Bring this up here, and I will run this, and this should just spit back all of our users. Okay, so here we go. We've got our 4 users here. Okay, so what we want to do though is we don't want to get 4 users back. That's too many. So instead, what I'm going to do is, rather than saying give me as many users as you can, and by the way, it defaults, there's a limit. I think we default it to 100, but let me go back to data here. Oops. And then we have a whole section on pagination. So yeah, so we have a limit. Let's see what the limit, if we do getting data. So limit. All right, so it limits the number of items returned, defaults to 100. So by default, if you have over 100 records that would come back in your query, or 100 items that would come back in your query, only the first 100 of those will show. It's also a little bit misleading. Again, DynamoDB can only return a megabyte of data. So if these are really, really large items and they exceed a megabyte, if you've got more, within the first 50 or whatever it is, it'll only bring back the first 50. So, but essentially, you shouldn't be writing items that are that large. Hopefully, you're using this for, for smaller bits of data. You can use it for large bits of data, but if you you typically will work the way that you expect it to, because the size of the items will work. Okay, anyways, so you've got this value here called limit, and we can go ahead and put this limit in as one of our options. So we'll just say limit 2, we'll save this, and we'll go ahead and run this again. All right, so this will, gotta save, okay, try that again, run data. Okay, so this will just bring back 2 items, but now this brings back more than just this items thing here. So instead of just having items, we also have this last key and this next function that is returned for us. So these are super handy, because what this is saying is the last key that got accessed was the users :Jane @doe. And so we can actually take this value, and there is another thing here that's another option that's called start. With start works is this gives you a way to start retrieving items from that position in the in your iteration. So if I take this and I still have a limit of 2, and I say start, and I specify Jane @doe like this, then notice we have Bob and Jane. Now again, this is being sorted by their email address, right? Because that's the sort key that's on here. So I got John and Jane last time. This time I should get John and Julia. So yeah, that's right? Is that what I? Yes, because I got. No, I'm sorry. I got Bob and Jane last time. Now I get John and Julia. So this says that the last key is Julia. So I can go ahead and use this, and I will put this in here and run this. And now I should get nothing, because there are no more items. Okay, so that's the way that it works, is if there is a last key. Again, Dynamo doesn't necessarily know, because it was because we exactly specified 2. So actually, if I should show you that, because it was probably a little confusing. Because it was exactly specified as 2, it has a hard time knowing what the last one is. I shouldn't say it has a hard time. That's probably not the right way to explain it. But if I run this where I'm looking for 3 items instead of 2 items, then it knows, okay, there are no additional items, so I won't return that next, the last key, and I won't return that next thing there as well. All right, I want to show you something quickly with pagination as well, because we are almost out of time. So the next function that you see loaded there This is just a convenience thing that because there's often times where you want to get as many items as you possibly can. Maybe you want to get them in batches or whatever you want to do. You want to stream them. You want to do different things like that. There's all kinds of cool things you can do, especially now that we have HTTP streaming built in. So you could actually stream results from DynamoDB using that, which we should probably show in another video because it is very cool. But essentially, you may want to just iterate over all of these different records that you're getting back, and you're assuming that you're going to get a next, so you want to make sure that you loop over it. So we have a feature in the pagination, again, that is this returned next function. So for example, if I take this little snippet of code here, which we wrote just to show you exactly how you can do that, then I can, so what this will do is I'll change this to result, by the way. And I'll get rid of starts because we want to show everything, and I'll move this result here inside my loop. So actually, no, I want to show result here first, and then within each iteration I want to show result as well, like this. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm querying users, everything on the users index or everything in the users collection. I'm limiting it to 2 per call, and then what I'm doing is I'm using this next function that's already built in. I'm saying if this results.next exists, then go ahead and await those results, and then spit those back, right? And then I'll just do a while loop on the result itself, so that as long as there's still data there, it will work. So that should do what I want it to do. So let's go ahead and run this here, and this should spit out the original results, and then oh, it's giving me an error. Oh, again, this is good old JavaScript. We cannot overwrite a const, so we'll change that to a let, and then we'll go back here and clear it and run that again, and this should work this time. So we get, so we get our first batch here, and then we get our second batch, and then our third batch is null, so that it doesn't return anything. Okay, that's pagination. So we've done pagination, filtering by key. That's part of the event handlers. Okay, so let's talk about event handlers again. I know this is, hopefully this is exciting for people. So let's go into our index file here. So this is something that we did last week. Just quickly, we showed this data.on handler right here, which essentially what it does is when anything happens, when we use this star, anything that happens, this will trigger a change, or this will trigger this function to run. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just leave this like it is, and we'll show this again, and then we'll get into some of the cool filtering things that you can do with it. Okay, so I'm going to just go in here and make a change to data. So let's go into Bob, and Bob was able to move away from Tulsa. I'm sure Tulsa's lovely, to San Diego. That sounds like fun. All right, so we're going to hit save on this. That's saved, and then this is actually now not going to run because, as you can see, last linked a minute ago, I did not save this. So save, and we'll do it again. So let's go back into Bob. So unfortunately, Bob, they recalled you. So you're not in San Diego. Let's say you had to go to Houston. How about that? Spell it right. Houston. Okay. Is that right? Yeah, Houston. Okay. All right, so we'll save this. So this saves, this information is now emitted something to, or emitted an event to our change data capture, and it is being picked up by this data.on, and now we are seeing that we have a data change, it's been updated, and we've got Bob Smith. Here's the information, Houston. It was created, modified, as labels, all that stuff is there. And then here is our previous value, okay? So the previous value here is super important because this is actually showing us where he was before, or what the state of the data was before. And the reason why we want to use that is because then we can even do things within that to say like, oh, something has changed, we need to, we need to, because, the city changed, or because the age changed, or something like that, we want to actually do something different as a result there. So there's a couple of cool things that we can do with data.on, right? So we don't have to just listen for everything. So what we can do is we've got a number of different options when it comes to data listeners. and that is based off of the handler. So you have created, updated, or deleted. So these are three different states of a record in which you can actually respond to differently. So for example, let's say that I want every time something gets created, and I want it to be anything. So I don't care what it is when it's created. I'm going to go ahead and have a created that fires off, and I'm not going to include the event. I'm just going to do this so that we can see it quickly. So I'm going to have one for created. I'm going to have one for updated, and I'm going to say updated, and I'm going to do one for, it's deleted, right? Yeah, so deleted like this, and deleted like that. Okay, so now I should get events on updated, created, and deleted. So let's go ahead and create a new item. So I'll go over here and I'll just add a new item, and I'm just going to call this test, and we don't need anything special in here, so just test, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save. When I do that, my item is created, and then I'm going to get a data change that says this item was created. Okay, now I go in and I want to update test, and I'm going to say test1 like this. I'm going to click save. Now that's going to emit an event that says the data has updated. And now I'm going to go in and just delete this item because we don't need it anymore. Oops. Delete. Yes, I want to delete it. And now we'll get this deleted here. And the other cool thing, by the way, is this will be out soon. We are updating our logs in our invocation screen here. So now you can actually see. So if you go and you want to see all the data change events that have happened, you can actually go ahead and see these here. So you'll see that we've got this updated. It'll tell you what the record was that it was updated on. So it gives you the key and so forth. And then if you click on that, it'll give you some additional information. For example, here we were emitting the event, so you have that there. So anyways, you have a pretty cool way that you can do that. And then also we have enabled search here. So if we did search Bob at Smith, for example. So just bring back all the records or all the data change records that have him in it. Anyways, this is pretty cool. This is something we've added. This will be out soon, and hope everybody can kind of play around with that. All right, so let's see another comment here. How these events are triggered? Are they okay? This is another good question from Andreas. So yes, so these are using DynamoDB streams. I mean, essentially the way that Ampt works behind the scenes is we are deploying what we call productized patterns, and these are patterns that essentially are. I know Andreas, you're a serverless expert and serverless guru as well. So you know what you would probably deploy in order to make these things work. You set up DynamoDB streams. You got a Lambda function that responds to them. You probably institute some structured logging. You're doing some of these other things. These are all really important things that you have to think about for all this stuff. We just set that up automatically, and we deploy that pattern for you on the back end. And so it's just taken care of automatically. But yes, that is how it works. And that's the goal, is to basically reduce to all these things that you would normally do yourself, right? Setting up the IAM permissions and making sure you have the database set up with the right triggers and so forth. All of that stuff is something that that you would normally have to do yourself. Ampt just does that for you, and it's just deploying directly to AWS native services. So again, there's no layer in between. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, so we're over time, but I do want to just show you one quick thing with the event filtering. So again, I'm using this star here because this is something that we want to make sure we just want to capture everything. But here's the other great thing. So if we did users star, for example, on the created event, and I can say now created new user, and I'll go ahead and well, we don't need to dump the event itself. But anyways, so now I'm only going to fire off this created event if there is a new key that's created that starts with users :*. Okay, so now if I go back over to my data here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new record. So I'm going to call this one test 1, 2, 3 again. And then I'll just do test in here. I'm going to save this record. Now this has now been created. I can see my new test 1, 2, 3 here. But if I jump over here, I'm not getting an event. All right, so nothing has been emitted. I'm not emitted. I'm not looking for that event, so I don't care that this other item was created. Now I could write a separate handler that only reacted to when it started with test or whatever. But now if I go back over here and I create a new item, and this one's going to be users, and this is going to be me, Jeremy, at getampt.com. And then there's some data in here, but I'm just going to put test because the data inside doesn't matter. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So I've created a new record with users, Jeremy, and I come over here and now I get this event. So this is just a really, really good way for you to filter. You can filter on which events get deleted. You can filter on you can filter on things that get updated and so forth. And then what else is those events can be listened to from multiple places. So that event, if you want to have like 2 handlers that listen for created for a certain type of user, you could do that if you wanted to. So it's just super powerful to do some of these things. Okay, I think we covered most things to do with data. So it took us 2 hours and 2 separate broadcasts, but hopefully this makes a little bit more sense, and you can sort of see the power of it. Again, Andreas, thanks again for the comments. Love the abstractions while still following common and proven patterns. That is the most important thing for us. Honestly, we want to make sure that that the patterns that you're using are the professional, scalable patterns that that an expert would implement for you. We want to take that heavy lifting, take that burden off of you, so that. So you can focus on writing code and writing cool, data, change data capture handlers, and doing cool things with events, and building, building the interfaces and the backends and all the other sort of event-driven application things that you would want to do behind the scenes. Just focus on adding business value. That's what we want to do at Ampt. So, anyways. Would love it if you, check it out, play around with it a little bit. Go to getampt.com, and check out some of these. Check out some of the case studies that we put up there. There's a demo video here that you can kind of watch and see the developer flow. We kind of jumped past some of that today. But yeah, we'd love that. Again, we have a bunch of information, a bunch of posts on our blog as well. We have a whole templates. If you go to GitHub, github.com/amp-templates. We have all these public templates that you can go and check out, starter templates, sample apps, things like that. If you're actually if you're signed up, you can actually go and launch these directly from here. Oops, I clicked off of it. So anyways, lots of cool things you can do. All right, well, that I will leave you all there. I appreciate everybody for watching, and I will see you in the next one.